Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive.
Excited to be here.
This time we are tackling How to Talk to Anyone by Leil Lowndes.
Yeah.
92 technique.
It's a lot.
It's a lot, right? It can be overwhelming, so we're going to try to break it down to some of the most important ones.
The best.
Especially for, our listeners who are all about like those light bulb moments.
Exactly. Actionable stuff.
The aha.
Yeah.
This is what I do with this information.
Totally.
The
gold mine of a book.
Yeah.
So many good things in there.
Well, and it's interesting because I think, so much of the advice that we hear about communication is very general.
Right.
But this is very specific techniques that you can employ.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes it stand out.
Yeah.
It's really a playbook. You can actually put these into practice and see results.
Okay, so let's dive in.
Mm-hmm.
One of the first things that she talks about is the importance of first impressions and how our body language speaks volumes.
Yeah.
Before we even say a word.
It's huge. I think she even makes a comparison to like a caricature artist, where they can just draw a couple of lines and capture the essence of somebody.
Yeah.
She mentions Robert Grossman, who's really good at this.
Yeah.
And it just shows how much we're reading into those nonverbal cues.
So it's not just about feeling confident. It's also about portraying it.
Projecting it,
in a way that people read and understand.
Totally. Because people are always looking for those cues.
Right.
To decide whether or not we're worth listening to.
Exactly.
If we're trustworthy, all of that.
Okay, so posture, smile, eye contact, big ones.
Huge. Yeah.
But then she gets even more specific.
Yes.
She talks about
She does.
this flooding smile.
The flooding smile.
Tell me more about that.
It's so interesting.
Yeah.
It's basically like this tiny little tweak where instead of smiling immediately when you meet someone, you delay it just by a fraction of a second.
Okay.
And that makes it seem so much more genuine.
Interesting.
Because it's like you're actually happy to see them.
Right.
It's not just like this automatic, polite smile.
It's like a slow balloon.
Yes, exactly. And it just creates this warmth
Interesting.
that people really respond to.
And then that reminds me, she talks about sticky eyes.
Sticky eyes. Oh, yes.
So maintaining eye contact,
yeah.
but not in a creepy way.
Not in a creepy way.
Right.
There's a fine line there.
Right.
So there's sticky eyes, which is like this engaged, intelligent look.
Yeah.
But then she talks about epoxy eyes, which is when you just like glue your eyes to someone.
And even when they're looking away.
Especially when they're looking away or when someone else is talking and you're just like laser focused.
So
It's too much.
it can be really intense.
Yeah. And she actually links that to research that shows that prolonged eye contact can be threatening for some people.
Interesting.
Like it triggers that fight or flight response.
Wow.
So it's all about finding that sweet spot.
Yeah, you don't want to freak people out.
Exactly.
But you do.
You want to be engaging.
You want to be present.
Yes.
Now this reminds me of that story about Missy
Oh, yes.
transforming her image when she took over her dad's business.
Missy becoming Melissa.
Yeah.
It's a great story.
Right, by just slowing down her smile.
Exactly.
She changed how people perceived her.
She went from seeming unsure of herself to projecting this sincerity and authority.
It's amazing how such a small change
It's incredible.
can have such a big impact.
It is, and it all goes back to that universal need for validation.
Right.
That inner infant she talks about.
An inner infant.
We all have it.
Yes, we do.
We want to feel seen. We want to feel heard.
Okay, so mirroring was a big one that stood out to
Oh
me.
yeah, mirroring is huge.
Subtly adopting the other person's body language
Yes.
and their energy levels.
It's so powerful for building rapport.
Yeah, and I thought it was fascinating. She talked about how attorneys use this.
Oh yeah, during jury selection.
Yeah.
They're watching for those subtle cues of agreement or disagreement.
It's like we're always looking for those signs of
Exactly.
connection, even if we don't realize it.
Absolutely, it's subconscious.
And then there's that hello old friend technique.
Oh, I love that one.
Right.
So simple, but so effective.
You act as if you're greeting someone you already like,
Yes.
even if you're meeting them for the first time.
Exactly. And it plays on that fundamental human need for connection.
Right.
When you project that warmth, it often triggers a reciprocal response.
Interesting.
It's like you're setting the tone for a positive interaction.
I'm curious about the section on detecting dishonesty.
Oh, yeah, that's a juicy one.
The story about Helen
Helen, the interviewer, right?
picking up on her subjects fidgeting.
Yes, but here's the thing about fidgeting.
Okay.
It can be a sign of dishonesty, but it's not a foolproof lie detector.
Right.
It's more about noticing a cluster of behaviors.
Okay.
Like a sudden change from someone's baseline.
Interesting.
It's like if someone who's normally very still and composed suddenly becomes fidgety,
Right.
that might be a red flag.
It's a piece of the puzzle,
Exactly.
not the whole picture.
Right.
It reminds me of that story about Clever Hans the horse,
Little clever Hans.
who could supposedly do math,
Right.
but it turned out he was just picking up on these subtle cues.
From his handler, exactly.
From his handler.
Yeah, it just goes to show you how much we're constantly sending and receiving signals
Wow.
without even realizing it.
So much of this is subconscious.
So much of it is.
Okay, well, all this talk about nonverbal cues is making me self-conscious
Me too.
about how I'm sitting.
Right.
Let's shift gears to something that I think a lot of people dread.
Okay, what's that?
Small talk.
Ah, yes, the dreaded small talk.
And Lowndes makes this really interesting comparison between small talk and stage fright.
You know what? She's right.
Right.
Because even the most brilliant minds can freeze up when it comes to casual conversation.
Okay, so it's not about having all the right things to say.
It's not about being a conversational genius.
Right.
It's more about just that initial connection,
Okay.
finding common ground,
Got it.
even if it seems insignificant at first.
So sometimes a simple "did you catch that game" is better than
Sometimes.
trying to sound brilliant.
Absolutely. It's about breaking the ice
Yeah.
and showing that you're open to connecting.
Right.
It's not about being a conversational gymnast.
Right.
It's about that initial connection.
Right.
And this totally applies to those classic conversation killers.
Oh, tell me.
Where are you from?
Yes.
What do you do?
I draw a blank every time.
Right, I know. So for where are you from?
Okay.
She suggests having a few interesting tidbits ready
Right.
about your hometown.
Okay.
Like if you're from Columbus, Ohio,
Right.
you can mention that it's often used for product testing
Interesting.
because it's considered the most American city.
Oh, that's a good one.
Right.
I like that.
So it's like having those little
Yeah.
interesting facts in your back pocket.
I'm trying to think now what's unique about my city.
Right.
Okay.
What about what do you do?
Right.
Instead of just stating your job title,
Yeah.
reframe it to highlight how you help others,
Okay.
because that's so much more engaging.
So instead of I'm an accountant, it's
Yeah.
and I help people take control of their finances.
Yes.
Okay.
It's so much more interesting than just saying, I'm an accountant,
Right.
which, no offense to accountants.
We love accountants.
Accountants are great, but it's just not a very exciting,
It doesn't spark joy.
it doesn't spark joy, right?
Right.
So find a way to make it
Okay.
interesting and highlight what you bring to the table.
And speaking of sounding impressive,
Yes.
she has this suggestion of learning 50 new words.
Just 50.
Just 50?
I know, it seems like a small number.
Right. I thought it was going to be like a vocabulary overhaul.
Right. But she argues that even that small upgrade
Okay.
makes a big difference.
Interesting.
It's like leveling up your communication skills just a little bit.
Okay.
Going from, average to verbally elite.
I like that analogy.
That's right.
Verbally elite?
Verbally elite.
Love it.
But using those words effectively, of course, not just throwing around jargon to sound smart.
It has to be natural.
It has to be natural, exactly.
Okay.
And she cautions against falling into gendered traps with analogies, too.
Oh, like what?
Like that story about the all-female team
Yeah.
who kept using ballet metaphors.
Okay.
And their male colleague was just totally lost. Like,
Yeah.
what are you guys talking about?
It's a good reminder to be mindful of your audience.
Always.
Okay. So we talked about mirroring.
Yes.
Another technique that I thought was so interesting was
What's that?
the premature we.
Oh, the premature we.
Have you ever noticed couples do this?
All the time?
Where they're like, how do we feel about this?
Right. They've only been dating for 5 minutes, and they're
Right.
already speaking as a unit.
Exactly. And you're like, wait,
It's fascinating.
you're not a we yet.
Right.
But she suggests using we even in these individual experiences.
Because it creates that sense of closeness.
Okay.
Like you're already on the same team.
Interesting.
So instead of, how do you feel about this new policy?
Right.
It's, how do we feel about this new policy?
It's so subtle.
It is so subtle.
But it's implying
Yes.
that you're already in agreement.
Exactly. You're already on the same page.
Okay. And then she also talks about inside jokes.
Oh, the quack quack moments.
Right.
She calls them that because of a story about a shared laugh
Okay.
over a duck call.
Right.
But the point is, those inside jokes, however silly they are, they
Yeah.
build this unique bond.
It's like your own little world.
Exactly. Like you have your own little language.
Okay, now while we're on the topic of making people feel good,
Yes.
let's talk about compliments.
Okay.
Because she is very specific
She is.
about how to deliver praise effectively.
Because there's a difference between praise and flattery.
Right.
Flattery is often insincere.
Right.
It's just trying to butter someone up.
Well,
Whereas praise is genuine.
right.
It comes from a place of really appreciating someone.
Authenticity.
Authenticity, exactly.
Oh, and one of her suggestions that I found so interesting was to deliver compliments through the grapevine.
Oh, the grapevine.
Right.
Yeah.
Because when someone hears praise about themselves
Yes.
from a third party,
It just lands differently.
right.
It feels less like you're trying to get something from them
Right.
and more like genuine admiration.
It's almost like planting a seed
Exactly.
that will eventually bloom into a compliment.
It's so clever, right?
Yeah.
And it really works.
Wondrous.
And then there's the accidental adulation.
Okay, tell me about that.
So this is where you subtly embed compliments
Okay,
within a larger point.
got it.
So it's less direct,
Right.
but still really impactful.
Okay.
Remember that story about the woman who received both a genuine compliment and a backhanded one
Oh, yes.
in the same evening?
You've obviously been well.
Oh my gosh.
Right, followed by,
Were you a model when you were younger?
ouch,
Right.
not the same.
Not the same at all.
It just shows how even well-intentioned compliments can be misconstrued.
It does. Right.
It's about being sensitive.
Sensitivity is key.
Okay, and then she talks about the killer compliment.
Ooh, the killer compliment.
Right.
This is a good one.
Tell me more.
This is where you find that one truly unique quality
Okay.
you admire about someone,
Right.
and you share it with them.
Yeah.
It's sincerely and privately.
At the end of a conversation.
Yes.
Interesting.
It's not something you just throw out there casually.
Right.
It's a very specific,
At the moment
it's a moment.
between you
Yes.
and this other person.
It's like a gift.
Right. And you've really observed them.
Yes.
And thought about,
You've been paying attention,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you found something truly special
oh,
about them
to highlight.
to highlight. Yeah.
And maybe they don't even see in themselves.
Exactly. It's about making them feel truly seen.
Got it. And then she also talks about those smaller everyday compliments.
Little strokes.
Right, little strokes.
Yes.
Just those small gestures
Yeah.
of appreciation.
Even just a simple, I love your new haircut,
Right.
or that was a really insightful comment you made in the meeting.
Right.
Those little things go a long way.
It makes people feel good.
It does.
And it strengthens that connection.
Absolutely.
Okay, and then I loved that thought-provoking exercise she talked about, the tombstone game.
Oh, the tombstone game. Yeah.
Have you ever played that?
I have.
Right.
It's intense.
It's intense, right.
but so revealing.
Asking loved ones
Yes.
what they would want on their tombstone.
Right. Because it reveals their core values,
It does.
what they want to be remembered for, ultimately. And then
Yeah.
you can compliment them
Right.
using their own words,
Oh, I like that.
right? Reflecting back their most cherished self-image.
That is brilliant.
It's a powerful exercise.
Okay, let's shift gears to the business world a little bit.
Okay.
Because she also talks about how to navigate those potentially awkward situations.
Yes, like when someone makes a mistake.
Exactly.
Right.
So what do you do?
She calls it the see no bloopers principle.
See no bloopers.
See no bloopers.
Okay.
Remember that story about the waiter
Yeah.
dropping the tray of dishes?
The whole tray.
And it's like, you don't even...
And the big players at the table
Right.
totally ignored
They didn't even flinch. They didn't even flinch.
They were just focused on
They were focused on the bigger picture.
the deep.
The deal, exactly. So it's about creating that safe space.
It's about reading the room
Yes.
because you don't want to.
You don't want to embarrass someone
Right.
over a minor mishap, especially in a professional setting.
Right.
But she contrasts that with the disastrous consequences of calling someone out at the wrong time.
Oh yeah, like that story about.
Remember Jane,
Yeah.
who made that insensitive comment about childcare,
Right.
not knowing that her client
Yeah.
was planning to open a childcare facility?
Oof. Yeah. Big mistake.
Big mistake.
Right.
So timing is everything.
Timing is everything.
Timing is everything.
It's about being sensitive to the context.
Okay, and then what about those situations where someone has a hidden agenda,
Ah, the hidden agenda.
right?
Lowndes is a big advocate for transparency,
Okay.
especially in business.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just be upfront about your motivations,
Even when it's awkward.
even when it feels awkward.
Right.
Because it's about respect.
Right.
It's about saying, hey, this is what I'm hoping to get out of this interaction.
It's about being upfront about what you want.
Exactly. And it ties into the WIFM principle.
Right.
What's in it for me?
What's in it for me?
Right. So be upfront about that.
Okay.
Don't try to hide it.
Don't be sly.
Don't be sly, because people see through that.
They do.
They can sense it.
Okay.
Remember that story she tells about the hidden agenda lunch?
Oh, yeah?
The person was like, oh, let's just have lunch.
Right.
But really, they were trying to get her to give a free presentation.
Right.
It's like, no one likes to feel tricked.
No.
Just be honest. Transparent.
Builds trust.
Yes.
Okay, let's talk phone conversations.
Okay. Phone conversations.
Because she dedicates a whole section to this.
Yes.
The unique challenges of communicating over the phone.
Right, because you're missing those nonverbal cues.
You are.
Right.
So your voice
How's that your voice?
and your tone become even more crucial.
Yes.
Remember that story about Ronnie at the travel agency?
Yeah.
She was so put off
Yeah.
by the person's tone of voice.
She was like, I'm never booking with them.
Exactly. She
Yeah.
was like, this person clearly doesn't care.
Yeah.
I'm going to take my business elsewhere.
Right?
And it's so easy to misjudge someone based solely on their phone demeanor.
It is. I've been guilty of that.
We all have.
Where you're like, oh, this person sounds...
a certain way. And you make all these assumptions about it.
It's like we're filling in the blanks.
Right.
With our own biases and assumptions.
It's true.
Right.
So it's a good reminder to
give people the benefit of the doubt.
To be mindful of that.
Yes.
Okay.
And to be mindful of our own tone of voice.
Right.
Because we might not realize how we're coming across.
Right. And she suggests bringing an extra dose of enthusiasm.
Yes.
To your voice.
Enthusiasm energy.
Right.
Because it compensates for the lack of those visual cues.
Got it.
And then she talks about talking gestures.
Oh, talking gestures.
Right.
Tell me more.
So instead of nodding along,
right,
you might say, I see what you mean, or that makes sense.
Right.
You're basically using words
to paint a picture.
To paint a picture.
With your words.
Of what your body language would be doing.
Right. It's so clever.
Right.
Okay. And then remember Laura's disastrous phone call?
Oh, poor Laura.
Where she really could have used the instant replay.
Yes, instant replay is so helpful.
Recording the call with permission, of course.
Of course.
But it allows you to catch details.
Yes.
Analyze emotions.
Analyze your own emotions, too.
Right.
Because sometimes we're not even aware
of
how we're coming across. So it's like having that third-person perspective on your own communication.
Okay.
And even cover for those moments where you might need to look something up.
Right. You can be like, hold on one second.
Exactly. Yeah. And then you can discreetly Google something without the other person knowing.
Brilliant. I love it.
It's like having a secret weapon.
It is for phone calls.
For phone calls, right.
And you know what it all ties back to?
The scorecard in the sky.
A scorecard in the sky.
Right.
Keeping track of those favors.
Right.
Debts.
Right.
Who holds the power?
Holds the power.
It's constantly shifting.
It's true.
Right.
Right? Like that power dynamic.
It's like a subtle dance.
It is.
But one that effective communicators seem to master.
See, they do. It's about being aware.
Yes.
Being adaptable.
So adaptability is key.
And realizing that communication is a two-way street.
Absolutely.
Right.
It's not just about getting your message across.
It's
about really hearing...
understanding the other person.
Their perspective.
Their perspective, yes.
All right. So much good stuff here.
So much good stuff.
This book is a goldmine.
It is.
Of communication wisdom, I feel like.
True.
We could talk about this for hours.
We could talk about it for days.
So what are some of the more fun outside-the-box techniques
the fun ones
that she recommends?
Okay, so one of my favorites is rubbernecking the room.
Rubbernecking the room.
Rubbernecking the room.
Tell me more.
Have you ever noticed how some people just make these grand entrances at parties?
Oh, yeah. Right. They own the room.
You own the room. They just like glide in and everyone's like, who is that?
Right.
So Lowndes says that's not an accident.
Okay.
That's strategic.
Interesting.
It's called rubbernecking the room.
Okay.
So she suggests when you enter a room, especially if it's a crowded party, pause dramatically in the doorway.
Okay.
And just slowly survey the scene.
With your eyes.
With your eyes.
Okay.
Just take it all in.
Don't make eye contact with anyone yet.
Not yet. You're just kind of like
observing
the landscape.
Taking it all in.
Taking it all in.
Okay.
And then
you make your move. Okay, I like it.
It's all about strategic presence.
Strategic presence.
Not attention seeking.
Right.
It's about owning the room before you've even said a word.
I like it.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, what else?
Okay, another fun one.
Right.
Be the chooser. not the choosy.
Be the chooser, not the choosy.
Yes.
What does that mean?
So instead of waiting to be approached
Okay.
at a party or a networking event,
Right.
she encourages you to actively select conversation partners
Got it.
who pique your interest.
So you're not just standing there.
You're not just standing there hoping someone will talk to you.
Right.
You're like, okay, who do I want to talk to?
Who's interesting in this room?
Who seems interesting?
Who can I learn from?
Who can I connect with?
Right.
Right. And then you make the move.
You initiate.
You initiate the conversation.
Love it.
It's about being proactive.
Being proactive.
Right.
Yes.
Not passive.
Okay, so you've made eye contact.
Okay.
You've maybe rubbernecked the room.
Right.
You've chosen your target,
Yes.
right? And now,
Now what?
how do you make them feel seen?
Oh, tracking.
Tracking.
Tracking is huge.
Tell me more about tracking.
This is about making people feel like they are the most important person in the room.
Okay, so it's more than just...
It's more than just active listening.
Right.
It's more than just nodding along
Right.
and saying, uh-huh.
Right.
It's about really tuning in
Okay,
to their communication style
got it.
and mirroring it back to them.
Okay.
So if they're animated,
Right.
you match their energy.
You meet them there.
You meet them there. If they're
Mhm.
more reserved,
Right.
you adopt a calmer tone.
Okay, so you're really matching their energy.
You're speaking their language.
It's like you're speaking their language.
not just verbally, but energetically,
Right.
emotionally.
And that creates this connection
It does.
that's so much deeper.
It is, because it makes them feel truly understood and
Get
appreciated.
strong. I'm taking notes.
Good.
This is so much good stuff. I feel like this book is like a masterclass in communication.
It is.
It's helping me understand the power of
Yeah.
our words,
What?
our actions,
Yes.
and how crucial it is to use them wisely,
Intentionally.
intentionally, right?
Yes.
Okay, and speaking of intentionally,
Yes.
I'm curious about this section on hidden agendas.
Oh, the sly fox syndrome,
Right.
as she calls it.
So it could be intentional or unintentional.
It can be.
Right.
Sometimes we don't even realize that
Yeah.
we're doing it.
We have a hidden agenda and we're not even aware of it.
Exactly.
But she argues that truly successful people
Yeah.
are always upfront about their motivations,
Even when it's uncomfortable.
even when it's awkward,
Even when it feels a little bit
Right.
like you're putting yourself out there.
vulnerable.
Vulnerable, yes.
Right.
But she says it's worth it because in the long run,
Right.
it builds trust,
it does.
builds stronger relationships.
And remember that story about being invited to lunch
Oh, yeah.
under the pretense of a casual chat?
Right.
And then it's like,
And then it's like, oh, by the way, can you give a free presentation?
right,
Yeah, that's not cool.
not cool.
That's a hidden agenda.
It feels icky,
It does.
right? It feels like a betrayal of trust.
Even if it wasn't intended that way, it
Wasn't
just
it?
doesn't feel good.
It doesn't.
Right.
And that's why she stresses the importance of transparency,
Transparency.
both in business and personal relationships.
In all areas of life.
Okay,
Because when you're honest and upfront
right,
about your needs and intentions,
right.
it lays the groundwork for mutual respect and understanding.
It's about being authentic
Authenticity
Right.
is so important
in all our interactions.
in all our interactions.
Right.
Because people can spot a fake
They
a
can.
mile away.
Right.
So just be yourself.
Be yourself.
Be genuine
Be authentic.
and be upfront about what you want.
Right.
And that ties back to the WIM principle.
It does.
Right.
What's in it for me?
What's in it for me?
Because we all have needs.
We all have needs.
Right.
We all have things that we want.
It's okay to acknowledge them.
It's okay to acknowledge them.
Okay.
And it's okay to be upfront about them.
It's not selfish
It's not selfish.
to say, hey, this is what I'm looking for.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Because the other person can then decide if they're able to meet that need
Right. Or not.
or not.
And that's okay.
And that's okay.
Right.
It's all about having those open,
Like
honest conversations
Right.
and not trying to manipulate or trick anyone.
It all comes back to that authenticity.
Authenticity, transparency.
Transparency.
Those are the keys.
They're the foundation of
That's it.
any strong relationship.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
now-
Yeah,
While nurturing those relationships is essential.
it is.
Right.
Relationships are everything.
I'm curious about how we leverage those connections.
The art of networking.
The art of networking, yes.
Right.
Because she has a whole section on this.
She does. She's a big believer in building
Yeah.
and maintaining
Right.
a strong network of contacts. And she gives some really practical advice for doing so.
Like what?
Okay, so one of my favorites is the business card dossier.
The business card dossier.
The business card dossier.
Tell me more.
So instead of just like collecting business cards and then throwing them in a drawer,
Which we've all done.
which we're all guilty of,
Right.
she says turn those business cards into a gold mine
Okay, how do we do that?
by taking a few minutes
Right.
after each encounter
Got
to
it.
jot down notes.
On the back of the business card?
On the back of the business card
Okay.
or in a notebook,
Right.
whatever works for you.
Right.
But just like little things you remember
Okay.
about the person,
About the conversation.
about the conversation.
Okay.
Maybe their kids' names, their hobbies,
Their dog's name?
anything that's going to spark your memory is
Exactly.
when you follow up with
Because then you're not just sending a generic,
that. Right.
"It was nice to meet you" email.
Right.
You're like, "Hey, it was great talking to you about your trip to Italy."
Right.
How was it?
Right. You remember those little personal details?
Exactly. It makes all the difference.
It makes them feel seen,
Exactly.
heard, remembered.
Exactly.
And then they're more likely to want to
To reciprocate.
help you.
To connect with you.
Right.
To remember you.
Yeah, to want to nurture that relationship as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the business card dossier, I love that.
It's a game changer.
It is.
It really is.
And it's such a simple thing.
So simple.
Just taking those few extra minutes.
It's about being intentional.
Being intentional. Yeah.
Right, because networking is not just about collecting
Right.
as many business cards as you can.
It's about quality over quantity.
Exactly.
It's about building,
Meaningful connections.
yes,
They can actually lead to something
mutually beneficial.
mutually beneficial. Yes.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, it's not about using people.
Right.
It's about connecting with people
And helping each other.
and supporting each other
Right.
and celebrating each other's successes.
Yes.
It's about building each other up.
I love that. Okay, so we've covered so much ground here.
So much good.
From the power of a smile
Yes.
to the importance of
Transparency,
Yeah.
networking,
Mirror.
mirroring.
building rapport.
We could honestly talk about this for days.
We could,
But I
I
have
think
So
okay,
much more.
this is a great starting point
It is.
for people.
It's a great foundation
Yeah.
for becoming a more effective communicator,
Well, and if you want all 92 techniques,
which we highly recommend.
we highly recommend checking out the book.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's How to Talk to Anyone by Leil Lowndes.
It's a great read, even if you just pick out
Pick and choose.
a few techniques
Exactly.
that resonate with you.
Yeah.
I think it's a valuable resource.
It's a great resource to have on hand.
Yes.
It's like a toolbox
Mhm.
of communication skills.
I like that. Communication toolbox. I love it. Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive
Yes.
into the art of communication,
Such an important topic.
it is,
So essential.
it affects every area of our lives,
It causes
our relationships, our careers,
happiness.
our happiness, our well-being,
Everything.
everything.
It all comes back to communication.
It really does.
How we communicate with ourselves
Oh, there we go.
and how we communicate with others.
I like it.
That's the key.
So on that note,
Yes.
to our listener,
Yes.
we would love to hear from you
What are your favorite takeaways?
from this deep dive.
Yes. What resonated with you?
What are you going to try
Yes.
in your own life?
What are you going to experiment with?
Right.
Because the best way to learn is to practice.
Exactly.
So get out there and start talking to people.
That's a wrap on this deep dive into the art of communication. Until next time,
Keep those conversations flowing.
keep those connections strong.